Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Spiritist Talk series promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation on Saturday mornings at 11 a.m. East Coast time. The US Spiritist Federation is committed to presenting Spiritism to everyone. Please support our efforts with a donation at www.spiritist.us or by clicking on the QR code there on the screen. As a reminder, the US Spiritist Federation has released a weekly virtual course called Initiation into Spiritism every Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. East Coast time. There's a nasty rumor that I'm going to be doing the next one on the subject of without charity, there is no salvation. Today, we have our very special guest, Marcia Trajano, whose topic is the value of life, about the important topic of suicide. And now, let's welcome Marcia Trajano. How you doing, Marcia?
I'm good, thank you.
Great. All right, so before Marcia shares her knowledge with us, let me introduce her. Marcia Trajano is the president and one of the founders of the Solitude Center for Spiritual Living. She is also one of the co-founders of the Christian Spiritist Community of Atlanta and a former board member of the US Spiritist Federation. She is a Spiritist for more than 25 years and has participated in giving talks and leading study groups in English and Portuguese. With a master's degree in management of technology and a project management professional certification, Marcia currently works in the field of project management. Thank you for being here, Marcia.
Thank you.
Remember, everyone, to please send in your questions because we will be open for a Q&A after her talk. Marcia, it's all yours.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who's here today. Thank you, the United States Spiritist Federation, for this opportunity to be here and talk about such an urgent and difficult to discuss topic. It is life in all its complexities, and it is about death as well. Thank you for putting the slide, and I'll manage the slides. So in the next few minutes, we'll discuss a little bit about life, about the value of life, and to provide a call to action to all of us Spiritists. We all know that life continues beyond the death of this physical body, our physical bodies. And because of that, we are, as we understand, immortal souls. We have the responsibility to take in all that life offers to us. We're here to learn, we're here to grow, to evolve in all the dimensions. Specifically, I would like to call out the intellectual dimension, but as well moral, emotional, psychological dimensions. From that point of view, we are all confronted with this very, very sad event, which is, it's an illusion, right? Called suicide. And this is our journey on earth, and we are here, all of us, destined to perfect happiness. So let us embrace life. Let us also be prepared to help anyone who's undergoing whatever moment of pain that is so great that they are contemplating suicide. So as we reflect upon the words, and I'm so sorry for the scrambling of the title in those pages. So bear with me with that. I wasn't aware that it would do this, but in any case, when we start to reflect upon the words that we find in heaven and hell, in principle, humans do not have the right to dispose of their own life. So when we move on to discuss suicide and suicide prevention. As we said, it is true and critical to us, spiritist or not, to understand this topic, right? I am going to the next slide. And just to stop you for a few minutes, just wanted to reflect upon what is suicide in our spiritist viewpoint, our spiritual viewpoint. And I would stop with the question that we all should ask ourselves. And I like to even do this as I close my eyes, right? Do I know anyone? Do I know anyone who has either attempted or committed suicide? In this brief moment, let us, all of us, send our prayers, send our love to all of those that came to our minds. And then I move on to say that this topic is so complex. And it's complex because it's full of misunderstandings, right? It's full of judgments. And guess what? Faux pas. In trying to do something that is good, we often may do something that is not so good in this prevention of suicide. The first misunderstanding that we come to is the reason behind the act. So, why do we think people commit suicide? Let us remember that suicide knows no boundaries, right? It crosses age, gender, sexual orientation, race, place of birth, ethnicity, social, cultural affluence, economical affluence, even the fact that you may have a solid religious or familial structure to support you. It knows no boundaries. So, in our lack of understanding for this thing that crosses all sorts of boundaries, right? Can we ask, okay, what is behind that? Are you selfish? And some people believe so. Are you maybe depressed? Biggest cause of suicide is depression, by the way. Are you in pain? What type of pain? Is it a physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain? Could you be perhaps influenced by a spiritual obsession? And the problem is that only one answer is always not enough, right? It's just too simplistic a view for the root cause of that. Physical death, as we know, is a certainty, the only certainty that we all have. We will all experience the death of this physical body in this incarnation, either because, I don't know, we're sick, because we're growing old, right, and reaching end of life, an accident. It's a certainty to all of us. But it's important to think also that maybe in those causes for the death of our bodies, there may be the one that is so difficult, that it's subject of our discussion today, is that we decided to kill ourselves. We committed suicide. I heard someone that I admire greatly say a long time ago that pretty much everything we do actually goes against the simple act of living. What am I talking about? What was he talking about? Well, he said, if you don't sleep enough, if you don't exercise enough, if you work too much, if you eat the wrong thing, if you drink the wrong thing, and there's also the diet du jour, right? If you breathe, I don't know, polluted air, if you drive recklessly, the number of causes for that contribute for us to not prolong our life on earth goes on and on and on, right? So we face the fact that we live our lives as we express our different experiences. Simply put, because of freedom to choose, our free will, our lives will be lived one way or another. So for us, part of what I call this carefully orchestrated life that begins before this incarnation, right? And it's messy to any of us, is we have this paradoxical contraposing forces, which is we're called upon to promote life, to really leverage, to take every opportunity that we have in living, in growing, in evolving, in all the circumstances, to actually savor life, right? To savor life in the path toward that perfect happiness. The counterpoint to that is the fact that we are vulnerable, and things that we would even otherwise think is harming ourselves is contributing to harm ourselves. So if we all have free will, and if our many, many lives result in different types of incarnation, why then should I not commit suicide, as Heaven and Hell by Allan Kardec said in the beginning, right? Why should I not be suicide, especially when I'm undergoing a moment of extreme pain or despair? Well, anyone who actually thinks about it and act upon it, we know must be living that moment that at a minimum is not comfortable. At a minimum, it is causing some pain, some degree of pain, physically or emotionally, psychologically. We must think that with the free will, this person is facing that extreme moment of pain, and or may have a it's common, right, especially uh earlier in the history of humanity, where it is a sense of honor. I'm going to be a martyr, and I'm going to take on the death to save somebody else. Or if I am a soldier, it is an honor to be there in a very dangerous situation to save my country, my nation, my whatever. Or the other fantasized viewpoint, I can go through revenge through killing myself, because I'm going to make the person revenged upon suffer, or even guilt. So those are the types of things that may come through our mind, our brains, but the person that actually goes through it may not, and certainly has not, truly understand the fact that life in itself has no end. That person has not understood that there is a commitment that we have made before we're even born in this incarnation, a commitment to fulfill our own plan that we're going to abort. The person has also not understood that the divine laws are eternal, they are unchangeable, and we're all subject to them. And with those laws, we are all responsible for what we do. And the more we know, the more we're responsible for what we do. So if we start or continue this argument, right, that life has no end, this eternity of life for us immortal souls, we don't die, right? We understand that we all came from a spiritual dimension, right? We're spirits coming from a spiritual dimension, living from a spiritual experience, but living a material experience in this life. And we will return to that spiritual dimension. So, immortal souls, right, with this life that doesn't end, there's life after life after life. We don't end. We don't have an end. Also, I let you know, from an argument's sake, that we're all responsible for the direction, the path of this life, but not its conclusion, because we are all fated to that perfect happiness. It's the end of our journey as pure spirits. So while we are actually responsible to direct, to forge a path for our existence, right? Exercising our free wills, we are not responsible for its conclusion. In the spiritual dimension, when we return to it, we will all be confronted with our conscience. At that point, we'll all come to realize everything we have done or not done. Things like, did we live a life that we set ourselves to do? Talk about that commitment, right? Did we do everything we could do to the best of our abilities? And here I'm talking about, I don't know, my professional life, my familial life, my communal life with a sense of neighborhood community. Did we do everything that we could do to the best of our abilities? Did we try to become the best version of ourselves? Will we, this is hard to ask, but will we be facing the happiness and the joy that we believe we should get upon the death of our material body for all the good that we have done? I don't know, from planting a little flower to building a life with someone, to raising the child to be an influencer to those around us, right? Or as we return to the spiritual dimension, when we no longer have this material body, right? When we no longer have that direct communication with the people that we need perhaps to make amends, to explain ourselves, will we face the immense regret for cutting short our life and all the opportunities that we planned previously and all the pain that we have caused? Can we talk a little bit about the consequences of suicide? Just as a reminder, right? Suicide will impact the person committing suicide. It will impact and will leave a sense of great regret, right? And we talked about this many times before, the journey of regret, repentance, being sorry, right? And all the aftermath for us to expiate and atone for that transgression to our lives. We will go through an enormous sense of guilt for the faults that we have committed or errors that cause the pain, for the sense of being blamed or blaming somebody else, or even in, especially in many different types of religions, the questions of offense, right? We will feel as spirits return to our spiritual dimension that sense of guilt. Oh my goodness, I've done this, right? We'll go through self-condemnation as well. If we flip the side, the consequences of suicide to the friends, to the family members, all of those that are considered our loved ones, you will also feel, they will also feel regret, right? And in the flip side of the same types of consequences, the sense of repentance. What did I not do? Right? How could I have acted? Why did I not detect that pain said person was feeling? I am so sorry for not having been a better mom, daughter, sister, professional, so on and so forth, right? To the person left behind, there's also a sense of guilt. Am I to be blamed for that act, right? How have I offended this person? There's also a sense of condemnation, and which is my call to action to all of us here, because it is truly optional. We have to shift the paradigm of thinking when we're left behind, when we're left living at the aftermath of someone's attempt or actual suicide, which is, how can I help? How can I be compassionate? And by feeling the pain that that person is going through or has gone through, I can help. How can I pray? How can I communicate with that person, right? That spirit. What can we do to help? If we are in pain ourselves, we must realize that it's quite hard for those around us to see our pain. And this is simple, right? I broke my knee several years ago, and boy, did everybody know my pain. I physically hurt. I cried with pain, but I also had all the accoutrement of fixing after surgery, right? The cane, the all the braces, etc., etc. I had doctors, I had pre and post surgery, I had physical therapy, I had an array of people in the medical community helping me. I had friends asking me, hey, how you feeling today? I had professionals helping. I had my entire community of spiritist friends and family to pray for me. Well, when I'm suffering internally and alone, and I don't even know how to look at myself, pay attention to my own pain, I cannot ask. And I'm asking you and myself and all of us here, if we are suffering, if we are in pain, seek help. And the help can be from a doctor, right? Emotional and psychological pains are real. We can ask help from those. We can ask for a friend. Listen to me. Listen to my pain. Can I share? Can you be compassionate with me? I can also pray and ask for prayers. Always remember, we do also have spiritual benefactors that are here with us, and they too can help us. So, in pain, or when you witness pain or you're suffering through it, let's seek help. There are those mechanisms and people different from different points are there to help us in our moments of pain. For those who left us and left us grieving, mourning for their loss, right? For our loss when they left. It is also important for us to be reminded that in this moment of pain for the loss through suicide of someone we love, in the moment of the mystery behind what is the root cause. I don't see, it's not clear what was so painful that the person did this. Our sense of desperation is actually not helping. Our sense of desperation is destabilizing us, is taking away from our equilibrium, our sense of balance, and our peace. So when we are going through this, I am bringing this call to action. Let us remember to to be centered in the pain of the loss and know that the best way to help is to provide our prayer. It's provide our comfort in life and death, right? Our thoughts will help, our prayer will help, our thoughts will be communicated through our mentors or not. So, as a recap, a person that has a spirit that has committed suicide in life, in the prior life, feels pain. It feels often guilt, right? And the guilt may not be conscious at the time, but there's a guilt for breaking that implicit contract, right? That promise, that agreement with life. And that agreement comes with several imperatives. And those imperatives are to respect others, right? Do to others what we'd like them to have done unto us, to respect ourselves, to respect our earth, to respect peace and harmony. When we commit suicide, we as spirits will go through guilt for breaking that those imperatives, those agreement that we have done to obey those imperatives. Let us remember, life was carefully, carefully orchestrated for us. And it is an opportunity for us to really give us the most favorable conditions, right? For in this world that we live right now, the worlds of trials and expiations, we are given the most favorable conditions to undergo those trials and expiations. But upon suicide, we break that, and boy, is it's beautifully, beautifully explained, difficult as it is, that book to read, but really well narrated in the book by Yvonne Pereira, the Memoirs of Suicide, right? You can also understand there are resources out there that is been shared to us. A great resource today is the Center to the Value of Life, CVV in Portuguese, right? But there are other books as well. So as we keep going in our next few moments, I'd like to remind all of us of the divine laws, right? Divine laws, as we can see, are eternal, they are unchangeable, and we're all subject to them. One law in particular that I wanted to talk here is the fact that the law of action reaction, right? The cause and effect, that we are responsible for actions. And as we come back, so remember, we return to our spiritual dimension and we are confronted with what we've done and what we have not done, for how much pain we have caused, and the consequences for those. So I can share here with you that one of the worst experiences that a spirit will feel in the postmortem is when that outcome comes from suicide. As we all know, the material body, all of us as spirits have a spiritual dimension in a spirit, a spiritual body, and a material body, a physical body. And this material body, as I mentioned before, we'll go through many, many experiences, and those experiences may be added to those experiences, right? That we like to live, and it will help our advancement. And so, from that clarity, is whenever we sever, when we cut short. We can actually we are going against the laws of God, right? And will impact our spirit. But the best, as I mentioned before, the best reference that we have today, in my opinion, is that book that I just mentioned, Memoirs of Suicide. It was published by the Brazilian Federation, Spiritist Federation, and it has been translated into English. And the book tells us, and that's why it's so important. It's to me a seminal book for us to understand what goes on in the spiritual realm. It explains all the stages that a spirit will go through, right? And the despair. First of all, as I mentioned, the despair, simply put, that I try to end my suffering. I do whatever to end the suffering, and I can't, right? The death of a physical body will not end my pain and my, I don't know, how can I say it, the disillusion in life that I'm going through, right? And in fact, we understand that it can be considered a worsening of your pain, because in addition of the pain that we're going through right now, it actually adds that deep sense of guilt in the conscience, right? What does it do, according to the book Memoirs of Suicide? What does it do to you? Well, your vibrational state will be very dense and will be really leading to a very difficult moment for you as a spirit to live. And just to remind everyone who has not read the book, right? In any dimension, in the spiritual dimension or not, we group ourselves according to our affinities, right? So we form groups, cliques, communities in any environment, depending on our likes and dislikes. In the spiritual dimension, this is all about how is my vibrational state, how is my state of mind, how do I show up? So think about it. Post-mortem, after, right after the act of suicide, you show up in pain, extremely embedded with guilt, and your vibration state is as dense as can be. Not a good place to show up, right? And that's the community of spirits that probably will be close to you, are those that are also in deep, dark spiritual depth, right? And unfortunately, we will have to go through that. We will have to spend what it may feel like an infinity, an eternity, fighting with those feelings that we're having. The spiritual suicide, because we still, let's say, let's pretend, right, that my life was I had my entire action plan of my life on this incarnation to be approximately about 80 years of age. And because I want to do this and I want to do something else, and I have all those plans, I'm a project manager, as Peter said before. So my life is to talk about tasks in a timeline, right? So you have the timeline of things that you, spirit, would like to accomplish in this incarnation. And oh boy, you're building this, you're making something beautiful of your life. And I am not 80 yet. In fact, I have quite a few years before then. I die through self-death, self-killing. And but I do have that vital fluid in me. And according to the book, Memoirs of Suicide, it's really important for us to understand that gap between the time when I should be leaving this material experiences as a spiritual being and the time aborted. That vital fluid will be there, right? And while all the things that happen in the decomposition of your physical body, which is doesn't need the vital fluid, in my case, it may still be there. So I, as a spirit, will be, forgive me for the words, but will be trapped in that moment of my suicide and living and reliving that. And that I can imagine, I could say it is the true hell, if we can use that word here, of somebody in pain, right? I want to end, but because I ended in such a way, my pain is not just relived ad nauseum, but I'm also reliving. I'm just unable to be outside of that loop, right? So it's important for us to see that it's a very grim picture that is painted, and it is so difficult for us. So if you go to the next slide as we're ending our time together here, I wanted to just pose this question: what can we do? Right? And it's so important because we are not truly equipped, right, to recognize, to prevent this moment. And the prevention really comes with self discovery, right? It's a moment of paying attention. And my call to action to all of us is simply be present, be in the moment. It is to understand that it's very difficult to link and create a causality, that root cause analysis, and create a causality between some of the triggers and the actual act of suicide, right? It does not make sense for us as parents of perhaps someone, or children of someone, or siblings, or related or friend of someone who has committed suicide, to understand that I could have, should have done something to prevent. And it all is around this ability to help and paying attention, to be there. So my call to action is to look in the eyes of each other. It is really to feel, it's really grow in our emotional intelligence, right? The sense of empathy, to understand that, simply put, as we live in the world of trials and expiations, we are all suffering some form or shape or degree of suffering. Therefore, we're all in this together. The other um, problem, which is a paradox of sorts, is the fact that we are not ready yet to allow ourselves to be ugly, to be vulnerable, to fail, right? We live in a society where, in order to meet the demands of what success looks like, I need to have the best body. I need to have the best, and I'm just going to go ad lib here, best profession, best title, best position of power, best ability to speak, the best whatever, whatever, whatever. And yet we are all imperfect spirits in a material life, in a world that we're still very far from that world where we will be perfectly happy. And in our pains, plural, that we suffer, that the vulnerability, the sense of weakness that we are going through may not meet the needs of society, right? So for me is that call to action to be present, but the biggest antidote, the biggest thing that we can do is simply put to love. I believe I have one more slide, right? And that slide here is I just wanted to say, how do we do this? How do we become better at recognize the pain that someone is suffering when they're actually contemplating suicide? It's hard, but I think we need to talk about it, right? So when that person becomes distant, they don't want to be among their friends, relatives. If it's somebody who's very extroverted, right? Loves, I don't know, this is hard, right? In the world of the pandemic, right? But if let's pretend there is no COVID, but let's pretend I love to go every Saturday to the movies with friends. And every Sunday, I don't know, I'm going to go skating. Went to the 80s now, right? I'm going to go rollerblading, or I like to go to the gym and exercise. I have a routine, and all of a sudden, I start to remove myself from that routine. I start to not want to be amongst my friends. This is a sign that something may be happening. Another sign is simply I am unable to concentrate or think clearly. So somebody who's very studious, and let's say a kid, right, that gets A's every time, and out of the blue, that person start getting C's and D's and F's, right, E's and F's. It's important to see that may be a sign that something is going on. Habits changing. Either I sleep a lot more or I don't sleep at all. Either I eat too much or I stop eating at all. One way to the direction, if we start to observe those around you that have changed in their habits or their external appearances, right? So, for example, oh, I am not, but let's pretend I am. I'm obsessive compulsive cleaner, and let's say you come in, everything is spotless, everything is beautiful. There's nothing out of place. You go in and look at my I don't know my closet, and everything is Marie Kondoed, right? So everything's by color, by shape, etc., etc. And I come to visit, or somebody comes to visit me, and you start to see things not as you are used to. That may be a sign. Um, Now, other types of signs that are more active in it themselves, if I'm talking about feeling a sense of despair, if I'm talking about guilt, right? If I talk about specifically suicide, if I talk about death, if I say things like, I just want to disappear, right? If I talk about a plan to when nothing of this will be the same, or if you start to see behaviors like I'm drinking too much, I don't know, I'm now taking drugs, whatever shape of drugs that may be, if I'm driving much faster than I am, um, if I am giving away my things, if all of a sudden you see someone who not that you need to be attached to things, but all of a sudden the most favorite items that the person treasured, let's say it's a painting that somebody did for them, or sculpture for those artistic with an artistic bent, or a favorite necklace, I don't know what it is, but if there's something very very special that person, and all of a sudden the person give away, right, it is a sign. And the last sign that I would like to bring about before we go is to actually think in terms of um, if I am depressed, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, I am now smiling. That too can be a sign. And for those very dramatic, sudden change after, let's say, a long period of sadness and darkness may also be a signal, because that means that the person at that point has made the decision to go. So I think it's important for us to know that this is as complex, and I call it mysterious. And my slide got really, really, really crazy here. So I'm just gonna send here another final slide that is crazy. But I just wanted to share here because this is to me a prayer, a caritas, right, that speaks to me for all of those that are in the moment of despair. And I just want to say goodbye to our discussion here is that when we see, right, when we see someone and we detect those signs and we feel that there's something there, please be there, respond to those signs, because you may be saving a life. In the research, we have come to the idea in the beautiful work of by the CVV, right? We come to terms with the idea that suicide may actually be a lack of aptitude to deal with a crisis. And as that crisis happen, you don't know what to do when you have a panic attack, whatever that may be, that is expressed this ineptitude to deal with that event, right? But if you have someone, and that's the work of CVV, right, that started with a 800 hotline, but it's now through Facebook, WhatsApp, it's omnipresent. That reaching out to someone, even if it's a perfect stranger, that can save the life, because it disrupts that false sense of fixing the problem, which will not, as we talk today. So for all of you that is listening to this, I give you my love and my sense of shared pain for you who may be going through pain, but all of you that also know somebody that lived through it. My love for you, and hope that you can overcome the spirit, this period as much as possible.
Thank you, Marcia. This is indeed a very big subject, and there's lots to talk about. But let's focus on the questions that we have
Sure.
and see where we. Okay. First question is from Yasko Arkabata. Hi, Yasko. What would be the effective ways people around could help to halt the turmoil that is going on in the mind and intimacy of one's facing the urge to commit the suicide act?
Thank you. Thank you, Yasko. Hi, it's good to hear you, and your very thoughtful question. And it's not an easy answer, Yasko. And I say it's not easy because we often don't detect, right? So, but you're saying you already see, right? You see the turmoil, which is a counterpoint, and you start to see that something is going on. How can I come to that person? How do I bridge the gap? And it is so simple. There are many techniques out there, and there are many opportunities to perhaps provide those resources. But it can be learning to breathe, learning to meditate. It's very simple. It is talking to that person, right? It is staying in contact. So I say to all of us, let us be more loving. Let us be more gentle. Let us be less judgmental. because a lot of what we see today from a statistics perspective, Iasko, is that more and more, even though there is no, age for suicide, but we're seeing the incredible growth in numbers for the younger ones. And we're talking about children and early adolescent, young adults. That is fraught with those individuals that are killing themselves. And so it is important for us to connect, to be there, to demonstrate in however many ways. It doesn't matter if you're going to be a geeky parent, a geeky aunt, or crazy cousin. Say that you love, be in touch, connect. And in the age of pandemic, we found that technology is amazing. So go into a conference call, whatever way, use your cell phone, but connect with that person, but let that person know that he or she is heard, that she or he is seen. That would be my best way to bridge that.
Okay. Nice answer. Thank you. Okay, next question. This is from Paula Craig. Actually, looks like a comment.
Mhm.
Absolute hopelessness. It is very dark here. No light, no love, no feeling of anyone who cares. Nowhere to go except to succumb to the darkness. So let me try to rephrase that
Mhm.
into a question. It could be like this: what can we do when there is that feeling of no hope and we feel a desire to succumb to darkness?
Yeah.
What do we do about that?
Yeah, so this is good, and I want to comment, Peter, and thank you for putting the form of a question. But I want to also comment on Paula's observation, right, Paula? Because I think we can talk about, and if you can just leave it there for a moment, we can talk about feeling that, and this is the micro level, right, Paula? That I may be feeling that. We can also talk about the macro level, which is we're living in a world, right? We're living in a world that is materialistic in in its essence, a material world, but a very materialistic culture. And the culture is exacerbated by the fact that we have idolized, we're worshiping now that glorified sense of ourselves, right? We're putting ourselves in only the edited version of ourselves. Therefore, the true versions of ourselves we want to eradicate it. But what happens when I can have a better version of myself to publish in whatever social media of the day, right? What happens when I cannot meet those expectations? What happens when my pain is so great and I'm not equipped to deal with that? So, in answering your question, Peter, it is really important, and I think Paula, you mentioned maybe before, right? That we are so lucky to have access to um, to books and literature and the learnings of Spiritism, right? We're so lucky that we have access to, for example, Heaven and Hell, or the Spirit's book, or the Memoirs of Suicide, or the entire work of, say, Andre Luis, that gives us the glimpse of the spiritual world. We are lucky because we have that access. How do we translate the access to the reincarnation, the idea of reincarnation, the idea that life does not end, the idea that we're here to become a better version of ourselves, right? We have commitment to be happy. That is what God wants us. And sometimes that becoming that better version of ourselves, becoming enabled to become happy, pain is often a part of that path. So it's the education and I'm not sure if I'm using the right word here, but the democratization of those discussions, those thoughts, those learnings.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay. You know, we certainly want to be happy, but it's also okay to be sad because that is part of life too. I think you
Hmm.
were actually suggesting that during your
Yeah,
comment.
yeah.
Important point.
Let me bring to that because I think you're right on the best answer yet, Peter, which is be familiarized not only with that sense of vulnerability and weakness, but also that emotional, right? The emotional self. It's becoming really versed in understanding all that we are because we're complex beings. We're not simple at all at this stage, right? We're complicate and we feel too much, we emote too much, but we're often either not allowing ourselves to have acknowledged the emotions that are perhaps considered negative or not acceptable. And I'm talking about, as you said, being sad. It's a perfectly legitimate emotion, right? Being angry is another one.
Right.
It's okay, right?
Yes.
But it's how do I access those emotions? How do I become comfortable with understanding that all the things that come from outside of me, external triggers to certain raw emotions that I have, and how do I manage those through my feelings, through the eternal or eternal immortal soul that we are that will continue to live, right?
Right. I mean, part of trying to be a good spiritist, as it were, is not to be afraid of our negativity, but when it comes out, to try to find ways to work our way through it in the
Yes,
best way we can.
yes.
Okay, let's see if we have another question. Okay, this is from Paula Craig.
Mm-hmm.
It upsets me when we are having these lessons. It's as if we should already know all this knowledge and try to live by it. But there is more humans that have no idea of this knowledge. I was 76 before I learned of any of this information. My wildest imagination couldn't have dreamed up this knowledge. It's a bit unfair, don't you think?
Paula, right on. You're spot on. Thank you. Thank you for that. Right. So recognizing that there is this again, I'm not sure if I'm using the best word, but this portfolio of books and information and knowledge, this body of work that is available, but it's not available to all of us. Right. We have to seek of it. So it does feel unfair. I have to say spot on. And to me, it comes then that the urgency, Paula, the urgency, the criticality, the imperative, if I may, of all of us to be better students and better stewards of the learnings that we are accepting, receiving. I just keep remembering that I believe it was Saint Francis of Assisi that said, right? Always teach the gospel. When you need it, use your words. So I think as we live, right, as we live those words at every moment that we are on this earth, as we live these words, I think we will have a better chance to be those stewards, the champions of those knowledge.
So, Marcia, if I could ask a quick follow up question to Paula's
Sure.
comment. If we begin to learn something near the end of our corporeal life, our current life, and it can be frustrating because, why didn't I learn this decades ago? Is it too late?
Good question. I'd say no, right? Because
Yeah.
if I say it's too late, Peter and Paula, I would say that it's finite, right? That we only have one chance to live. And as I I tried to explain earlier in this discussion, we live multiple experiences, right? It's part of our free will to select how we're going to go about. But the amazing love and mercy that God has and demonstrates to us is that it's not just one chance. It's almost like we have many, many, many rehearsals of the final play. And I don't know if that's a good metaphor, but we have many, many, many chances. We have a second, a third, a fourth opportunity to do the same thing. And so, from that perspective, never too late. And the other perspective, Paul, is that, and I read this, and I'm trying to think where I read it, but it was a commentary to somebody who was in a coma, right? And this person was in a coma for not a short period of time, and it came back, right? It came back to consciousness and was able, in one brief moment before his final, he was a young man, his final moment in life, in this life, was able to reconcile with his dad. That one moment. And you can say, was this too late? No, no, it's not too late, because you're leaving, you're taking with you as you return to our spiritual home, our spiritual dimension. You take all that we conquer and we achieve in our consciousness, in our with our experience as an immortal spirit.
It's connected to the gospel according to Spiritism, workers of the last hour. It
Yes,
doesn't matter so much when we learn certain lessons or begin to go in a different direction, but as long as it happens.
I love it. Love it. Real good linkage. Thank you, Peter.
Okay. All right. Next question from the US Spiritist Federation. How much will our intentions play a role in the consequences we might experience as a result of suicide?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And I would say it's a direct consequence. And I even say not only the intentionality, right? Because we have what we call the direct suicide, but also the indirect suicide. So we can the intentionality plays with the degree of the consequences, but also uh, how much you know about it, right? So
Mhm.
let's say if I am born in a completely materialistic society, I have no access. This goes to you, Paula, right? We have no access to any of the learnings. You are in a family that keeps in a circle of people that have no sense whatsoever. You have no support. That intentionality, that indirect result of the lack of information and the indirect type of suicide, or in terms of I did not know that I was killing myself by driving 100 miles per hour, right, in this highway. I don't know, I'm making this up, but there's the not only direct, indirect, the level of how intentional you are in doing it, but also how much do you know about it. So it is critical that we learn about it. And you could say, oh, no, I don't want to know about it because I'm going to be more responsible. No, it's really important. A lot of research today, by the way, and I'm going to do a plug for a book, if I may. I don't know if you can see it, by Andre
You
Trigueiro.
look at
Yeah,
yeah.
living is the best choice. And his, of course, for those who do not know him, Andre Trigueiro is a journalist, and he wrote this book. Thing was 2012. This publication by US Spiritist Federation in English is amazing. He even gives a very good, rather recent updates to this whole discussion, right? But those statistics tells us a lot about our the need, the urgent need for us to be talking about suicide, right? And the manner by which we talk about suicide is also very important.
Right. Thank you. Very good
Thank
points.
you.
Okay, next question from Erica Ning. Hi, Erica. Hello, Marcia. Thank you for this lecture. Can those spirits who commit suicide repent quickly and receive help and do better?
Oh, Erica, thank you. This is an unfair question. I don't know. I don't know. It really depends, right? It depends on a multitude of things. And it's very important. And I would say it's a maybe a pause for us to reflect upon because there are in many different religions there is such a sense of guilt and blame associated with suicide, right? And because spiritism, and as we saw, we find it in the Spirit's book, we saw in Heaven and Hell, we saw in many different books, including very explicitly with that title of the book that I mentioned to you before, the Memoirs of Suicide. You see very specific, very negative reference to what happens to the spirit. I think it's important for us to know that we're here to talk about life, right? We're talking about preventing suicide, direct or indirect suicide, through the ability to promote life, to the ability to understand those connections, but also to be able to express our love as much as possible, right? But I think in this, and I'm not answering your question, Eric, I know that, but I think it's important for us to understand the most important element for us to promote life and promote our love is to accept. And I'm giving a hug, metaphorically here, a virtual hug to all of you in this metaphor of love, to accept every single person as they are, in their moments of pain, with their moments of despair, in their moments of suffering, of weakness, of vulnerability. And for that, I'd say for those spirits that have left, right, that have committed suicide and are suffering, because we all are responsible for every action that we do, right? But we have to understand that there is no judgment, and that for us, if we know someone, and just send your prayers because it will help alleviate their pain. Send your understanding, send your love, however way you can.
Very important point. Yes. Okay, I believe this will be our last question. This is from Selma Laporte. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. As holistic beings, excuse me, as holistic beings, people with any psychological problem should seek medical help by also spiritual assistance, as this also may be the case of negative spiritual influence. Do you agree?
Wholeheartedly, Selma. Thank you for the question. Right. First of all, um, because of what we believe, right, which is not only life after life, but we also believe in that communication between the spiritual world with our material world, which means we also believe in that spiritual influence, negative or positive. So I think it's important for us to know, regardless if you do have a mental health uh, problem that you're going through. Maybe you're suffering through depression, anxiety. You're going through, you have been diagnosed as bipolar, or I don't know, whatever it is that you're suffering from a mental health spectrum of illnesses, as well as knowing to understand the entire spectrum of potential influence that you may have, negative or positive. Absolutely, I beg all of you, and for you, Selma, to be the conduit of that message. It is very important for those who, whatever conditions they are, to seek psychological help, as well as spiritual health. And the spiritual health may come through a prayer. It may come through healing therapy that a spiritual center will give it to you. However, that may be, it's very important to do both. It will be better. Social, your social network, right? Your friends, your family members, all of those should be together and give from many different perspectives to help through the painful moment. I've seen the work, just so you know, Peter. I've seen the work of a non-profit organization, NGO, that is doing a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful job with children and young teenagers. Right, you're talking about preteens, and when you see some of the work they're doing with art therapy, and you can see those young kids, and it is really heart breaking information to see somebody that is coming through our therapy to let the therapist know that they have to fight that suicide ideation every step of the way, every moment of their lives. And this young person expressed the fact that having access to mechanism to counter that ideation is really important to him. So let us be agents of that help, whoever and however we are.
Okay. Well, thank you, Marcia, for encouraging all of us to reflect on this subject. It's extremely important, obviously, and a very big one, and essential for those who are struggling with that urge. And thank you, everyone who watched this live. And we thank all of you who've been following our weekly talks. And once again, thank you for supporting our efforts with a donation at our website or by scanning the QR code on screen. The US Spiritist Federation is committed to providing additional information on Spiritism. Certainly, more and more work is coming out in English, but also the US Spiritist Federation is an important resource of information on Spiritism in general. Our next talk will be Saturday, July 2nd at 11 a.m., and we will have Andrea Marshall Neto, and the theme will be the Kingdom of Heaven. And now, before we end our live, Marcia, could you please say our final prayer?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'm going to close my eyes, invite all of you to do the same. And as we breathe in, may we all connect with all the light that is already touching all of us as our benefactor spirits of light who are here together with us during this past hour and some minutes. May they all bring light to our hearts, to the pain that we are suffering, undergoing, as well as the pain of many of those that we know. May we be better prepared, dear Lord, our Master Jesus Christ, and all of the spirits of light. Help us to be that guide, be that light as well, that shine across that painful moments, the moments of crisis, the moments of extreme sense of helplessness. May we all bring the joy of living, the zest for life, and all awareness that we may have toward our end state, which is our perfect happiness. May all our families be blessed in this beautiful Saturday. So be it.
So be it. Thank you, everyone. Have a